Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find out, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's a photographer turned novelist, real stories, real craft, real takeaways, and the author of the book Double Exposure, none other than Mr. Kirk Voclain.
Hey, glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Welcome again, Mr. Kirk, once more on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Absolutely. I'm from Houma, Louisiana, which is about 50 miles southwest of New Orleans. Houma is kind of a little small town. I mean, if you look at just the city of, there's like roughly population 30,000, but if you take into consideration the whole parish, which is what the rest of the world calls counties, I draw from about 100,000 people in that whole area. So yeah, it's kind of a neat little market that we pull from, and I enjoy being a professional photographer. I've been doing it. I did my first wedding when I was 15 years old. That's over 45 years ago. So, I've been doing this forever.
And thank you so much for doing that, Mr. Kirk, and for sharing your talents to the world, as well as your book. Thank you. And today let's talk about build a profitable studio in a small market. Tell us what it's all about.
Okay, well, I mean, I like I said, I've been a professional photographer forever. I mean, I got my first camera by I was reading the back of a Kellogg's cornflakes box, and it said save up your box tops and get a camera. And I told my mom, I was like, I want this camera, so keep buying these Kellogg's cornflakes. So she did. And now I was literally 8 years old when that happened, and I got a camera, and I remember taking pictures of my sister and taking pictures of flowers and, all kinds of things like that, and just thinking, man, this is just so much fun. Of course, the key word that you used a minute ago was profitable, because, again, I'm 8, 9 years old at this point, and I'm bringing a roll of film to the drugstore to get developed. And you'd have to spend $10 or so to get that developed, and I wasn't making no money. So I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a way to make money at this. So first thing I needed to do was get some kind of a job, right? I mean, I got to get money, because my mom and dad were not exactly super wealthy people. And anyway, I got a paper route. I worked that paper route for like 6 months, and I saved every penny I could get, because I knew that if I was ever going to be a professional photographer, I mean, I couldn't use a little crappy Kodak Instamatic camera. I needed a real camera, right?
Yes.
So I remember I saved up $200, okay? And I remember this like yesterday, that I remember telling my dad that I got the money. Let's go to J.C. Penney's and let's get a camera. And so I went, and the camera was $200, just like that. And when the lady, ran up the bill, it was $210, she says. I was like, no. Look, 200. What? Why 210? She goes, tax. And I'm like, okay, this is like, I guess I'm about 14 years old at this point, and I'm like, major life lesson, taxes. That's always going to be on top of you. And for your listeners, if you want to have a profitable business, do not forget you will have to pay taxes, and always try to be my policy is I don't play no tax games. I am straight up 100% legit and honest to the penny. And, I've always been that way. And, I got audited once, and it was no sweat, because guess what?
Yes.
I was straight up honest. And that's what the auditor even said. He was like, well, we ain't got nothing here. Thank you very much for your time. So
Uh,
That's what it things like that is what you have to do to
mhm,
run a profitable business. Now, taxes
sure.
is just one of them, you know. Just a side funny note is that I borrowed that $10 from my father to be able to buy that camera because I had the 200. Borrowed the $10. I still owe him for that $10, by the way. And
Mhm.
he says that's his retirement. Anyway, but that's just a few little things about me and where I come from and how it all got started.
So, Mr. Kirk, in double exposure, how do you connect photography over there?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, double exposure. I mean, the thing about this book is that while I am not a spy, there's so many little elements in this book that's literally me. Okay. I mean, the background the spy uses to photograph the Secretary of State is a Denny background. And it's the same background that I use. Okay. I mean, I literally put the model, the exact model number if somebody wanted to go get the exact same background. Anyway, so it's just little things like that when it comes to photography and this book that are absolutely 100% straight up the same. You know, the type of camera he uses, same camera I use. You know, the his favorite lens, my favorite lens. You know, so I mean, there's so many little elements like that in the book that is 100% me and photography, and I think that's one of the things that makes it fun to read.
Definitely. And Mr. Kirk, many people are drawn to small markets for a lower overhead. But what are the less obvious strategic advantage of building a studio in a small market that people often overlook?
Well, here's the thing. I think many young, and I almost got myself into this same trap when I first got started. The young entrepreneurs, people who are, photographers, whatever business you're getting into, is do your absolute best to not get in debt. Okay. And that might sound like, oh, what? I had to get a loan from the bank. I had to do this. Okay. There's a lot of things that you absolutely right. You have to do. I'll use me as an example. I bought a lens, for example. I was doing more and more weddings, and there's this one particular lens that was required at a wedding. That lens, by the way, even way back then, 30 years ago, was $2,500. And I didn't have $2,500 to drop on a lens. So I remember taking a credit card and buying the lens. And then every time that lens made money, like if someone ordered a picture, for example, that was done with that lens, the profit from that was used to pay back the credit card bill, basically. So I didn't just pay the minimum on that credit card bill. There was some months where I paid hundreds and $500 $600 on that bill. There was some months where I only paid $20 $30 because what happened was what I was focusing on was making the lens pay for itself with the whole goal of do not get in debt. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I think lots of people make when they try to, they're creating a business. They get themselves so far in debt that they can't get out. And as a result, you know, it's bad for business. So, I mean, that is when people ask me, what's your biggest advice? Why were you successful? I tell them that all the time. Do not get in debt.
Mm, yes, it's better not to get in the people.
Yeah.
Better to improvise if
Yeah.
you can. What is the most critical mindset shift a professional must make when moving from a big city competitive mentality to small market community focus one?
I think it's exactly what you said. It's the community mentality. You gotta be. I'll use real estate photography as an example. And I know in the New Orleans market, for example, which I am not in the New Orleans market, and New Orleans is only 50 miles from me. You would think, golly, only 50 miles. But it's like that's a whole different world. That's the big city mentality. And, I remember once, and I talked to their real estate board, and I was asking questions about, how do you become a member of this board? Because I thought, why not? It's only 50 miles away. How about if I expand my real estate photography division of what I do into that market? And it was just so cold. It was so impersonal. That's that's a big city. Whereas the
Yes.
small cities, it's all community, and it's warm and fuzzy, right? So if that's not part of your personality, then you're going to suffer in a small community, in my opinion. This is just Kirk opinions here. But you in a small market, it's all about that community. So again, back to my example of real estate photography. I made multiple, still to this day, meetings with the real estate board. I'll go and I'll sit there and I'll chit chat with them and hobnob and act like I'm one of the boys, even though I'm not. I'm not a real estate agent, but I'll sit there and hang out with them and drink a cup of coffee, and I'll offer to come on most of the places around here. That shows you community. I know this. Most of the places around here on Tuesdays, they have like an internal meeting, and I'll offer to be their guest speaker. If you need some advice, bring me in. And they all do periodically. They bring me in as their guest speaker to talk to their agents about why professional photography can help them. And anyway, just that's what I'm getting at. It's community, community, community in that small market.
In a small market, as you said, Mr. Kirk, is profitability more about survival and comfortable living? Or have you found it's possible to achieve a scale and significant wealth? How do you define success in this context?
I don't know. That's such a broad. I mean, profitability is. I mean, it's always. I mean, it's so simple. I mean, if you buy it for $1, you better be selling it for $2, whatever it is. That's profit. But I think also, again, in the photography world, there's hidden costs. You know, um, like it ain't just the cost at the lab, which you spend to have something printed. There's the time factor. There's the cost of gasoline vehicle, the cost of education, because you got to continually educate yourself. There's the cost of vehicle expenses, because you ain't getting and doing whatever you're doing. You ain't getting there walking. You got to have a vehicle, insurance, all those types of things. You got to add all that up. And that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to profitability that people make, is they forget to add all that up. And what happens is they think, oh, I bought it for $1 and I'm going to sell it for $2 and I made money. But when you calculate all those other things, in reality, you might have bought it for $1.50, $2, and you're trying to sell it for $2, and you ain't making no money. And so I don't know if that's what you're asking, but to me, that is what you got to do if you want to be profitable.
Indeed. And what was the biggest psychological or emotional hurdle you faced when starting, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest hurdle in business. I guess with me, again, I just didn't have the money to dump into things like advertising. You know, I remember I remember my dad. He had a mobile home lot, okay, back
Mhm.
then, and he had piles of junk, because that's what mobile home lots tend to collect. And I was walking through the back of his place, and I come across one of these flashing arrow signs. I don't know, they're still around. It's got like a little arrow on it with lights, and it's got those little slots where you put letters, and you build out something, and it says something. Okay. Well, he's got that back there. I was like, "What are you doing with this?" And he said, "Nothing. Why, you want it?" "Yeah, I want it." Now again, how much did I pay? Nothing. I took the flash and arrow sign, I put it in the front of my business, and I put if I remember right, I put senior portraits, because senior portraits were a really big thing back then. Senior portraits on sale. And then of course, the phone number. It was shocking to me how many times my phone rang after that just because people were driving by. Meanwhile, all the other photographers in town, they didn't have no flash and arrow signs. Why? Because that was, that was that was just bad business. That was just, you know, cheesy marketing. I don't know, man. That flash and arrow sign that I paid zero for made me so much money. And it that was a form of advertising, obviously. But that's what I'm getting at. You got to look at in today's world, it's like social media. I don't know. Are you hedging yourself with social media? I saw a guy the other day. I was watching a podcast, and he said in that podcast, when it comes to social media, it takes 6 months to 3 years before people actually start responding to your social media. And I thought, that's so true.
That's true, yes.
It's like people imagine they're going to post something on Facebook or Instagram, and then boop, they're a millionaire. It just don't happen like that. And since we're down that road, I think that's another mistake young entrepreneurs make, is they're not patient. You got to be patient. You got to be able to, people say, back in my day, it was word of mouth. That was the most powerful, and I think to this day it probably still is, the most powerful form of advertising. But you can generate word of mouth with social media, but that noise just does not happen overnight. You just got to be patient. And so, there you go. That's another piece of advice, if you want, for listeners, is that, and you're starting out a business, don't get in debt and be patient. There you go.
Patience is virtue, people. In a small market, the generalist seems riskier. How do you identify the right niche? One of that both in demand, not already overserved. And when did you know you found it? Eureka!
Okay. I'm glad you asked that, because you reminded me of something I wanted to talk about. And that is that all too often, the mentality is, if everybody else is selling blue balls, then, man, I need to be selling blue balls because everybody is doing it. That has never been my philosophy in the photography world. My philosophy was, what's the opposite of blue? Red? Well, if everybody else is selling blue balls, I'm going to sell red balls because nobody's doing that. And I am the only one. And, it's things like, again, I'm going back when I first got started. It was like black and white photography. That didn't exist when I first started. Black and white was a no-no because it was like, that's the way the old guys did it. Man, I brought that in because nobody else was doing it, and I made a ton of money selling black and white pictures. That's just an example. So many people would take their images back in the day and they'd put them in a little folio. Nah, I ain't doing that. Everybody does that. I put mine in a book, you see? And the list of things like that, I could go all night. And that's what, to me, when you're looking for your niche, as you put it, what you got to do is you got to take into consideration what everybody else is doing, because you don't want to be, so left wing, so way out over in the other universe that people go, something's wrong with that guy. But that, by the same token, it's got to be related but opposite, so that what happens is you become the only one. You see what I'm getting at? And if you're the only one and everybody wants it, they all got to come to you. So to me, that is the angle that also a lot of people miss, is that they just follow the crowd. Don't do that. Do what the crowd ain't doing. And that might be just the thing for you. I don't know.
Definitely. What will be your passion will be what you want in life, I think.
Yeah.
Just do what is your passion, and for sure you'll be successful. How do you navigate pricing in a small market where cost of living might be lower?
Mm-hmm. Now there is a place right there where you have to really decide who you are and what you're trying to do. And I'll use the restaurant industry as an example. If I was to tell you McDonald's is selling hamburgers for $20, most people would be like, what happened? What's wrong? I ain't buying that. It's too expensive. Okay. And you would be right. How much is a McDonald's hamburger? It's $1 in most scenarios. Okay. In New Orleans, at one time, Commander's Palace was considered the number one restaurant in the world. Well, in the United States, at least. It's not that right now, but at one time. And at that time, I actually went to Commander's Palace during that time. And on the menu, big as you please, was hamburger, $20. Now, if they would have had hamburger, $1, I would have thought, man, something's wrong. What's wrong with this? Now, both of those hamburgers are the same. I mean, let's analyze them. They both got bread, right? They both got beef, lettuce, tomatoes, onions. Now, one might be smaller, but I mean, is it 20 times smaller? Is the McDonald's hamburger 20 times? No, it's not. It might be half the size. So theoretically, then it should sell for $10, right? No, it's still overpriced. Okay, well then the Commander's Palace hamburger should sell for $20. Should sell for $2, right? No, that again, that also doesn't fit. So when it comes to pricing in your market, big or small, you've got to decide who you want to be. Do I want to be Commander's Palace, high end, fancy, number one restaurant in the whole country? Or do I want to be McDonald's? Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Because while McDonald's only sells that hamburger for $1, they sell billions of them. Who makes more money, McDonald's or Commander's Palace? I can promise you, McDonald's makes way more money. So, but they do it on volume, see? So again, you kind of have to decide. You have to sit back. Whatever your product is, you might be selling cupcakes. It doesn't matter. Which one are you? Are you the high end or are you the low end? And I'll end this little bit about pricing by telling you the man's name was Irvin Kelly. You don't know him because he's not a famous guy. He was the front end alignment man at Terrebonne Ford, which is the Ford dealership, the local Ford dealership here where I live. One day he tells me, you know, Kirk, no matter what it is, if it's selling for $100, you're going to probably have one customer. But if you sell it for $1, you're probably going to have 100 customers. And when it comes to pricing, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Interesting, Mr. Kirk. Interesting indeed. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry and second season. My Bible verses 101 in its first season. And book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season. And my book 101 Food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season. And my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in fourth season, as well as Movie 101 and Review and Music 101 and Science 101 and Sex 101 in second season. So, Mr. Kirk, tell us about your book. Can you please summarize to our
Sure.
listeners?
My book, Double Exposure. There you go.
Yes.
How fun is that? Summarized is this. I mean, it's about a spy whose cover is he is a professional photographer. Because when you're a professional photographer and you got confidence and a camera around your neck, you can go anywhere and you can do anything. And that's real life. That I have personally experienced. And so in my book, The Spy, that's his cover. And he's on a routine assignment to photograph the Secretary of State. And he realizes there's a problem, that his agency, it seems like his agency is trying to frame him, and that as a result, they're going to try to do away with him. And so he has to turn the tables on this whole thing. And it's a trek through New Orleans and Vienna and Mexico and, Puerto Rico. And I mean, he goes all over the place. And I don't know, it's pretty fast paced, and I really enjoyed writing it. And the angle, I mean, every other spy thriller I've ever read, they all got an angle, and the angle is that he's a photographer, and it's just fun. So there you go.
And thank you so much for sharing double exposure to the world, as well as your knowledge and wisdom, Mr. Kirk. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yes. So where do people can buy your book, Mr. Kirk?
You can go on Amazon. You just search my name, and you'll find all the books I've written.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Kirk Voclain, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Kirk, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.